Hello there everybody and welcome back to the island. My name is Will, I will be your guide for today, and this is An Ecologist Plays, the channel where we are learning more about nature by playing games. Now we are just having a quick look here. We have got a Carbonomys and a Manta that is having an epic fight to the death here. Now Carbonomys, as I've mentioned previously, would not have had that big domed shell. Instead, they would have had far flatter shells, more streamlined and better adapted for life in the semi-aquatic ecosystem, because where Carbonomys lived was a freshwater delta in the northern parts of South America and Colombia, well, what is modern day Colombia. So they would have been perfectly adapted for life in a semi-aquatic environment. Right, now what we also have coming up right ahead here, two of my favorite little creatures on the island over here. The first one is probably the one that whenever you get stranded, you will have a proper look at, which is, of course, the dodo, a bird that is famous for being extinct. Now, when we have a good look at the dodo here, believe it or not, this is actually a pigeon. And we know that based on a number of factors, but one of the things you can clearly see just starting out, and he's standing quite still there, is that little keratinized thicker section of the bill right in front there, within the rest of the bill kind of a semi-naked face, and the rest of the bill not having that keratinized tip over there. That is quite characteristic of, well, most of the pigeons that are alive today as well. And so there were big pigeons found on the island of Mauritius, and though they are often portrayed as being quite stupid, these birds were in fact quite intelligent for pigeons. Unfortunately, they were very easily hunted to extinction by humans, who saw them as an easy source of food, perhaps not the most delicious source of food, but nonetheless a source of food on islands where they may have gotten stranded, or where they may have had quick stops over before going on with their voyages. Additionally, when sailors arrived on the island of Mauritius, they obviously then introduced certain other animals as well, such as pigs and rats and dogs and cats as well. And all these animals would have found the dodo a very, very easy prey. Because these birds evolved on islands, there were no big mammalian predators there, so they were not used to interpreting, oh, there's a big cat coming towards me, there's a big naked humanoid creature coming towards me, I should probably run away. So they didn't have that flight response when they saw these potential predators walking their way. Additionally, they were flightless, as you can see there, tiny little arms, pretty pointless in terms of flying. They would have just used that perhaps as steering when they were running, but otherwise quite pointless. And oh, there's a raptor, time to fly. Oh, okay, right, I knew it was a mistake standing on the beach here all willy-nilly, but anyway. The dodos then, of course, there's a reason why dodos were flightless, and that's because there is, as I've said, there were very few predators on islands such as Mauritius, and to actually develop flight muscles and to maintain those flight muscles would have been a very, very expensive endeavor to do. And on islands there are, of course, limited resources, so to spend a lot of energy on getting flight muscles and maintaining flight muscles, it's not worth it in the end. And so a lot of species, a lot of island birds tend to become more and more flightless. Some of them are not completely flightless. There are, for example, some species of kingfishers on these islands which are not completely flightless, but they fly less and less. And that's because it is a very costly thing to do. And if there are no predators that you suddenly need to escape from, and you can catch your food by just running after it, why then should you actually, be able to fly? Now, we have exchanged our big flame crest, which is basically the Boeing version for flying around. We have exchanged it for the Pteranodon over here, the one known as Skeletina. It's a bit more of the Cessna of the flight world here. It's a little bit quieter than the Argentavis, which is a little bit more noisy, squawking sounds that it made. And though it doesn't have the stamina, for me as a guide on the island here, silence is more important than being able to fly long distances. And then coming in here to land briefly, we have a creature from South Africa, the moss chops. And let's just risk getting off here to have a good look at him as well. Now notice the moss chops here, quite a bulky creature, and there is another one in the distance there. They are known from the Permian period, which is a period that was even before the time of the dinosaurs. Big, bulky herbivores from South Africa. Quite amazing creatures. And they would have had quite pig-like teeth there. Not really designed yet to grind down plant material properly, but they would have stripped the vegetation, and they would have had their bulky guts over here to actually break it down, to ferment the vegetation so that they could then actually obtain nutrition from it. Quite cool creatures, quite thick heads as well. And here we have a little tiny little monkey known as the Mesopithecus. Ah, yes, you gave me a fright, little one. Of course, he got a fright from me as well. Mesopithecus, as I've mentioned last time, translates to medium-sized monkey, and that was a primate species similar to macaques from nowadays that was found in Asia. So pretty much that area where you'll nowadays also find some macaques, you also had Mesopithecus. And it's quite likely that they would have occurred in little groups. In primates, it's very often the case that they do occur in little family groups, and it's very likely that the Mesopithecus would have done the same. It just gives them extra protection against predators. There's less likelihood that you are going to be the one that gets eaten. That's safety in numbers after all. That's a good reason for being in a group. And then of course, if you do have a predator in the area, you potentially could also protect yourselves against it. Then right behind us over here, I've been trying to find these guys on the island for ages. A Baryonyx. Amazing creature. And if you look at the snout there, at the mouth, you may easily mistake this for a sailless Spinosaurus. And they are in the same group as the Spinosaurus. They are all most likely also piscivorous, meaning fish eating. Notice the claws there, quite long claws, hands curling in, the typical holding posture for many of these dinosaurs. And then the long, thin snout there with relatively long, sharp, rounded teeth. This one does not want me to have a good look at it, constantly turning in this way and that. But this creature is almost certainly a piscivorous dinosaur, eating fish, and would have then occurred along streams and rivers, as we have over here. Most likely would have had some adaptation in their mouths that allowed them to actually detect vibrations made by fish. They most likely would have put their heads in the water and then actually bit onto any fish that were in the area. And not to think that that would have been only things they would have eaten. They most likely could also have taken on some smaller dinosaurs, although the Iguanodon over here is a bit too well matched for it. And you can see both of them quite scarred there, and the Iguanodon now finally deciding to give up the chase, or to run away, give up the fight, and unfortunately it was also then killed in the process. And the Baryonyx here going after the Phiomia, which is a early elephant, believe it or not. Short little tusks. Hello, okay. Well, I risked a lower flight, and as a result I got attacked by the Baryonyx there, but it does give the Phiomia a chance to escape. And then of course the Iguanodon over here, quite scarred after its encounter with the Baryonyx, but it is very well adapted for defending itself. But unfortunately, I think, yeah, that Carnotaurus over there is going to be a bit too much of a match for it. That Iguanodon is not looking good. It would of course have some thumb spikes that it could use to defend itself, but a badly wounded Iguanodon against a Carnotaurus is definitely no match. As we have been busy refueling, that Carnotaurus over there has been causing some chaos on the beach, killing quite a few dinosaurs. It clearly is extremely hungry, and we're just going to switch over to a lighter format there. And there we go, it's going to attack that Parasaurolophus again as well. And Carnotaurus then meaning meat-eating bull, and that's because it is the only carnivorous dinosaur known to have two horns on its head like that. Most likely used either in display or in rutting, well, fighting one male fighting another male. But then again, both males and females did have that, so perhaps it had a bit of a different function. It was most likely not used in hunting animals or hunting its prey, as some scientists have suggested, where they say, well, it probably impaled the prey items with their horns. Most likely was not used for that. We're not sure exactly how tall or how big those horns were. It could have been covered by quite an extravagant keratinized structure, which wouldn't have fossilized as easily, but they have found relatively long bones there on the head, indicating that it had some kind of horns. And here we have a Spinosaurus doing what a Spinosaurus does best, catching and killing a whole bunch of fish. As I've mentioned previously, the Spinosaurus, of course, defined by that sail on its back there, Spinosaurus aegypticus, really a massive dinosaur. Unsure exactly whether it... Oh, and we are also under attack by it. Okay, fine, we'll just go up a little bit. There we go. And watch it a little bit more from a distance. It's dangerous to fly too low here, it seems. There we go. Spinosaurus aegypticus, characterized by that sail, which most likely was used... Oh, and let's head up again. The sail most likely used to actually control its body temperature. It could have been used for a variety of other reasons as well, potentially for display, although they haven't found any color pigments associated with that sail, so it's unsure whether it was used for display or whether it was a thermoregulatory structure. And there it is, going after a Hesperornis, which we talked about previously as well. Quickly dispatched that with its strong jaws, and currently just kind of wading around on 4 legs. It is unsure whether Spinosaurus was an obligate bipedal creature, meaning it constantly walked on or had to walk on 2 legs, or whether it was obligate quadruped, meaning it had to walk on 4 legs, or whether perhaps it was, as is most likely the case, a facultative bipedal organism, meaning that it walked on 4 legs but could also very easily have walked on 2 legs if it wanted to. Now, one of the theories proposed for the sail on the back is that it was used to actually swim like sailfish do nowadays. However, it is highly unlikely that that was the case. The structure of the skeleton suggests that that most likely wouldn't actually have provided enough power to actually be used in swimming, and most likely would have just increased drag. It seems every year a new study is coming out showing that it is more or less aquatic than was previously said. And until they find a living Spinosaurus, I guess that debate will still be up in the air. So here, as we fly upriver, upstream a bit, we are leaving the estuary behind, which is, of course, characterized by the mixing of freshwater and saltwater, and we are heading more into the lower reaches of the actual river, which is where water is fresh. It is also flowing very slowly. The river widens a bit, and also seems to meander a bit more as well. And we can see that right up ahead as the river makes a nice turn over there up ahead as well, it seems. It also seems to split a bit over here as well, which is quite strange. Rivers do not tend to split like this. Instead, if you actually have a look at maps and you look at where we currently are, you can see that there's kind of a merge. The river should actually be flowing that way. Rivers do not work the way as is shown here, unless you are looking at an actual delta. Rivers do not split, rivers actually merge. Nonetheless, what we have up ahead seems to be a pair of hunting Tyrannosaurus. So a male and female most likely here. It seems that they are very evenly sized, although females would most likely have been a little bit larger than the males. There seems to have been some sexual dimorphism there. And very often nowadays in birds of prey, the females are also larger than the males because they need to produce the eggs, which are then of course laid, and that takes quite a toll. In order to do it, usually females are larger than the males. Nonetheless, the T-Rex was able to run quite fast indeed, most likely faster than all of us, except perhaps Usain Bolt, who could outrun a T-Rex over short distances. However, when they did catch up to you, at least it would have been most likely quite a quick death. Hello there. Okay, we'll just fly up a little bit to get out of reach of the T-Rexes there. Most likely would have been quite a quick death. They would have had quite powerful jaws, not necessarily the same strength, size for size, as you have with things like Thylacoleo, which is the marsupial lion, but nonetheless quite strong and quite capable of killing us, basically, in an instant. And unlike what some paleontologists would have you believe, the T-Rex was most likely not a scavenger, not an obligate scavenger. It would have been very capable of hunting its own food. I mean, you do not look like that and then just scavenge. No, 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 no. If you look like that, you are almost certainly a top predator. But even top predators will scavenge if given the opportunity. And there is no reason to believe that the T-Rex, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, would not have actually scavenged when given the opportunity. As lions and most other predators will also scavenge if given the opportunity. Coming up ahead on the right hand side here, a very, very strange creature indeed. The tickle monster. We actually have two of them, one up right next to us here and then one right up ahead there. This is a Therizinosaurus, and most likely is Therizinosaurus itself, characterized by those massive knife-like claws on the front limbs there. Believe it or not, they were actually herbivorous. They would have eaten plant material and quite possibly would have used their long nails there to defend themselves, or perhaps to pull branches a little bit closer to themselves, similar to what sloths would do nowadays. Now, there seem to be some feathering on them as well, in real life as well, not just in the game over here, but most likely not to the extent that we have them, the feathers covering the upper body over here, quite a dense layer. It quite probably would have been a bit sparser covering rather than this dense covering of feathers. Now, that's quite a cool creature. And they would have come from Asia, and there have been quite a few discoveries of Therizinosaurids made in the areas that they were found in as well. And just a note, when you have something like Therizinosaurus with ending in the RUS there, or the US there, that is the actual genus of the creature. You'll have some species in there as well, like for example Tyrannosaurus. You'll have Tyrannosaurus rex, which is the specific species within the Tyrannosaurus genus. When, however, you have something ending in ID, like I just had with a Therizinosaurus, or you can have Spinosaurus, like we've got the Spinosaurus over there. You could also have Spinosaurus or Tyrannosaurus. When you have that, it just means that it may not be in that specific genus, so it may not be a Spinosaurus genus or a Tyrannosaurus genus or a Therizinosaurus genus, but it is something that is similar in appearance and quite probably would fall within the same family, at least as well. So the ID, that just means like whatever you have preceding that. So a Stegosaurid would be something that looks like a Stegosaurus, which we have just on the left hand side over there. The high-plated lizard. Now, in real life, they would have only had one row of plates along their back, not the two rows with those tiny little ones along there. And they also would have had only 4 spikes on their tail, not 6. So the tail spikes there, called the thagomizers. Oh my word, we have a horse running around. We've got Equus, and it's being chased by 2 raptors. Now, if I were on my Argentavis, I would most likely have... Hello? No, 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 no. I do not want to fly lower here. I would most likely have killed the raptors and saved the horse. However, it seems I have distracted the raptors long enough that the Equus over there could actually escape. That is the first time I have seen a horse in this playthrough, which is quite cool. Nonetheless, anyway. Now, as I was saying with the Stegosaurus, they also were herbivorous. They would have had their heads quite close to the ground there. And I'm just going to turn around a little bit so that we can see a little bit better. There we go. So they would have had the head quite close to the ground. They could possibly have stood up against trees and browsed a little bit. I know in my childhood there was a book series on dinosaurs that came out, and in there I remember them having a little picture of a Stegosaurus actually standing up against a tree fern and browsing on it. But yeah, the Stegosaurus quite weird in that the hind limbs were a little bit longer than the front limbs, giving it kind of a sloped back, as we can see if it actually turns around like that. There we go. So kind of sloped like that. Not too pronounced, but still a little bit there. And here, as we still carry on upstream along the river here, we are reaching what we call the middle reaches of the river. This is where the river is now flowing a little bit faster than it did at the lower reaches there. Usually at this time more streams would have joined than the headwaters, which we'll get to later, the top part of a river, and then even more would join, which would then make it the lower reaches, which are slower flowing, has more water in it, and meanders a little bit more as well. And if you actually looked at the species of fish in there, they would technically have changed as you went from the estuary up to the lower reaches and then up into the middle reaches over here. With the middle reaches, having species that survive better in a little bit faster flowing, more oxygenated water than in the lower reaches. But then the headwaters of the river, that is where you would find species that really need a lot of oxygen. But we'll talk about that next time. For now, however, I have to go back to compiling some exam papers, which is always fun to do, and I am going to bid you all farewell. So thank you very much for joining us on our little guided tour adventure, everybody. We saw some creatures at least. We'll delve into them a little bit more next time in the third part of our guided tour series. And then we are going to also talk about Paraceratherium, which is the big rhino relative walking up behind us over here, and Meganeura, the biggest dragonfly-like creature to exist, as well as the biggest snake to ever have been recorded on Earth, Titanoboa, which we can see slithering at the back there. So until next time, everybody, stay safe. I will see you all soon. Bye.